My name is Arne Langlet. I'm senior scientist at the Environmental Politics Research Group at the University of Vienna, and I have the great honor to introduce our guest speaker, Peter Berger, and moderate the seminar. Overall, first I will give a short introduction into what the project Twin Politics at the University of Vienna does, and with the seminar series, or this webinar series we have here, this Ocean Seminar Series. So Twin Politics is a ESC grant running from 2024 to 2029, and the idea overall is sort of to understand and to research how the digital twin technologies can be used in, for example, international ocean-related governance and cooperation initiatives. And so as you see here, we research this on different international fora, such as the Seabed Authority, the BVNJ Agreement, and etc. And we have created this Ocean Seminar Series actually already a couple of years ago in our last project as a space to sort of complement the research that we do with discussions from people from the field, people from policy making, etc., and researchers that present their work to really just create a space to exchange a bit openly and freely and supplement or complement what we do with this discussion, also learn about ongoing developments and research in this field. So today we have the honor, and I speak here and moderate this on behalf of Professor Alice Vadreau, who's on childcare duty today, who's also the PI of the Twin Politics Research Project and also the Environmental Politics Research Group. So today we speak about unlocking private sector data for the Ocean Science Decade, and we have the honor to have Peter Berger, who is, I just learned, still with Fugro, but seconded to the IOC UNESCO. And so before and still, he's been working on for Fugro, which is the world's largest leading geodata company, or one of the largest leading geodata companies. And he now works at the IOC UNESCO to support and facilitate the access to private sector data, which is really important to really gain a full understanding of the ocean and get the data we need for the ocean we want. So he's coordinating the corporate data group at IOC UNESCO, which comprises leaders from private sector companies representing a wide variety of marine industries. So I hand over to Peter, and then after the presentation, you can raise, or you can already during the presentation raise your hand or post the question in the chat, and after the presentation I will moderate a bit the discussion, and we'll see where it takes us. Thank you very much, and I hand over to Peter. Thank you.
Great, Arne, thank you very much. Let me share my screen, see if that works. Share. I think it does. Yes.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk here today. Subject very close to my heart, so great to be able to be part of this seminar series. And indeed, my name is Peter Berger, part of the Decade Coordination Unit here at the Ocean Decade in the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. And maybe before starting this presentation, let me start a little bit with a surprising fact that you may know, but we have more detailed maps of Mars than we have of our own ocean floor. And that's basically also the essence of the challenge that we're having, because that's pretty amazing. Our ocean covers 70% of our planet, but it remains largely unexplored. So there's quite some work to be done, and I'd like to talk to you about that today. Why does this matter? Ocean data is the key to unlocking all kinds of solutions regarding climate resilience, biodiversity decline, sustainable ocean management, and a sustainable blue economy. So today I want to show you how the private sector can be a game changer in this mission. You see some data on the screen here, but the ocean is the Earth's life support system. It gives us half the oxygen we breathe. It regulates our climate, absorbs most of the excess heat from greenhouse gases, but it's also the backbone of the blue economy, very important. It's spanning trade, energy, fisheries, tourism, and I think it's supporting over 3 to 4 billion livelihoods globally. But this system, the ocean ecosystems, they're under threat, and without a healthy ocean, biodiversity will decline, these economies will falter, and climate risk will escalate. So that's why it's important that global stewardship is in place. It's guided by frameworks like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and especially SDG 14, Life Below Water, and this UN Decade for Ocean Science. And it's not just important, it's urgent. And that urgency was recognized by the United Nations when in 2017 they proclaimed the United Nations Decade for Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which runs from 2021 to 2030. And this Ocean Decade program is hosted by the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, IOC, of UNESCO. Now, what is this UN Decade for Ocean Science for Sustainable Development? It's a global platform for leadership and collaboration with really a clear rallying cry. The vision is the science we need for the ocean we want. And I often say immediately after that, and if you need science, you need data. And the decade's all about breaking silos. It's building bridges. It's bringing governments and scientists and civil society and also the private sector together. And within this decade framework, we tackle 10 challenges, each with clear goals. And these goals, they allow us, if all goes well, to reach clearly defined results, specific outcomes and impacts. And you see the challenges here on the screen. And in 2024, we did a full review. We were close to halfway. We did a full review of where we were, and we defined very clearly what do we want to achieve for each of these challenges by 2030. And if you look at these challenges, they will not surprise you as being important. Very known challenges to the ocean, and especially challenge 7 and 8 are all about ocean data, which are foundational to solving some of the other challenges. Sustainably expand the global ocean observing system, obtaining data, and then using that data to create a digital representation of the ocean. So this whole Ocean Decade endeavor is in support of the science we need for sustainable ocean management and a sustainable blue economy. And ocean data, I said it already, is foundational to everything. Without data, from weather forecasting to disaster preparedness, from protecting biodiversity to managing fisheries, we cannot act. Without it, we're flying blind, and every data point helps us to understand how the ocean really works and how we can protect it. Ocean data really enables these smarter decisions, better protection, and more sustainable use of marine resources. And some examples of ocean data, seabed mapping or bathymetry, that reveals the underwater landscape. And you see a beautiful picture of the underwater landscape in this image. But other data like real-time measurement of ocean currents, salinity, pH levels, temperature, they all help us to understand how the ocean functions and how it responds to change. And another example, data on marine mammal sightings or other biodiversity data, they are vital clues to the ocean health and climate change. So ocean data is really extremely important. There is, however, a problem because, like I already said at the start, despite its vital role in sustaining life and economies, much of the ocean remains unobserved, meaning we don't have the data we need for the science we want. And the data that we do have is often locked away in archives, on servers, inaccessible, and not available for science, which obviously is a huge disappointment for science. And this data gaps slows innovation, and it weakens climate resilience if we want to understand what's happening. So we really risk making policy, business, and environmental decisions and choices in the dark. But yeah, we feel we can help fix this, at least be part of the solution, if we work together across sectors to unlock and share what we already have, the data that we already have. And this is where this corporate data group comes in. And this is a corporate data group that was established between Fugro, the geodata company I come from, and the United Nations. And it was established in 2023 under a partnership that we are having. And it is to facilitate a much stronger involvement of the private sector in the ocean decade. Why is the private sector involvement so necessary? Marine companies working in the marine environment, they already for decades and decades collect vast amount of ocean data, often without realizing its broader value for science. If they would share that data for science, company can turn the operational insights that they gathered for their projects and their operations into solutions for science. Marine industries like shipping, offshore energy, infrastructure, telecommunication cables, fisheries, routinely they gather an awful amount of ocean data on ocean conditions, the seabed, marine ecosystems. And like I already said, this data is often stored on internal systems, used for their projects, used for their operations, but then stored on their systems, very rich in insights, but largely inaccessible to the broader scientific community. And by sharing that data, companies can turn their valuable dormant data into active insights by contributing it to science. So this is where I have to click here. This is where the corporate data group comes in. It's a quite bold collaborative initiative that helps companies to identify, to curate, and to share ocean data responsibly and securely, really promoting the importance of private sector data sharing. As you can see on the screen, the group comprises leaders from private sector companies globally and representing a wide variety of marine industries. And these companies, they work together to make possible what at times seems very complex, with all kinds of barriers in place when you talk about data sharing. But through guidelines, policy recommendations, and engagement with their peers and with industry, they promote the concept of data sharing. Importantly, the group is co-chaired by the CEO of Fugro, Mark Heine, and the executive secretary of IOC. So they both co-chair this group, which also means that we get senior C-suite level engagement in these companies. So let me now try to show you some of the important work that this group is doing. Let's take bathymetry. Already briefly talked about bathymetry or seabed mapping the seafloor. Mapping the ocean seafloor brings major benefit. It's foundational to everything that we do around the ocean. It improves climate and weather models. It improves ocean current modeling. It supports fisheries. Understanding where the seabed is helps shipping. It helps predict hazards like tsunamis and the impact of tsunamis and the impact of sea level rise. I'm sure you understand if you don't know where the sea bottom is, it's difficult to do a lot of modeling. It drives scientific research. It preserves cultural heritage sites. It secures trade routes, and it strengthens disaster resilience. So a fully mapped ocean is key for sustainable safety, for sustainability, safety, and for innovation. So it's not just about science, it's a strategy to make sure that we understand where the sea bottom is. Today, however, we only have 27% of the global seabed mapped to modern standards. 27%, that means that almost 75%, 3/4 of the ocean, is unmapped. We just have no clue what the seabed looks like. And it's estimated that an additional 50 to 20% of the seabed already has been mapped. So basically you would reach close to 50% of the seabed being mapped already, but that 15 to 20% is mapped, but that information is not shared. It's not information. And that's a missed opportunity if we don't make that data available, which is relatively easy. And to facilitate that, as Corporate Data Group, we created a bathymetry data sharing guideline. We published it a year ago, and this guideline addresses how private sector companies can share the bathymetry or seabed mapping data that they have collected for their projects. Feel free to use the QR code. You can download that guideline, and then you can see how simple and pragmatic you can engage with companies to do so. And nice to explain as an example on the screen. You see a piece of coast offshore Uruguay, 2014-2024. And the light colored lines, those are seabed mapping lines. And the area within the yellow boundaries, that was seabed mapping data that was derived from 3D seismic data. So for energy exploration, a 3D seismic campaign was done, and that was left there on the shelves. Then at some point they used that 3D seismic. You can easily derive bathymetry from that. So from existing data, they were able to add 40,000 detailed seabed mapping data to the JEPCO map. So that's an example of how the private sector can really have an impact on enhancing the amount of seabed mapping data. Another example is marine megafauna. That's also an example that we addressed as Corporate Data Group. And we're talking about whales, turtles, and other large species. And the presence and abundance of these species is obviously an indicator of ocean health. Now, the private sector again holds and still collects vast amount of marine megafauna data, which they collect during their offshore operations. And they use marine mammal observers to see whether their ongoing operations may interfere with marine mammals present in the area. And often these marine mammal observers are a permit requirement. So they collect that data, they use it to take operational decisions in the moment, and then that data is left again in archives, but it's not publicly available. And sharing that data on the presence and movements of marine mammals obviously helps predict changes. It helps guide conservation, and it reduces risks like ship strikes. It informs marine protected areas, and at the same time, it deepens our understanding of climate impact. So very important also here to engage with the private sector to make them share the data, not just leave it on their servers and go to the next project, but make it available to global repositories like OBIS or GBIF. So to do this, we created in a similar way as we did the bathymetric data sharing guideline, we created a marine megafauna data sharing guideline. Again, QR code, feel free to download it. And unlocking these data sets will again help to fill critical knowledge gaps, and it will enable scientists to understand the species migration patterns and population densities, all critical for conservation, risk mitigation, and sustainable ocean planning. And also with the upcoming BBNJ and the 30 by 30, this kind of information is extremely important also to see whether certain measures are working. So it's to see both the positive and negative effects of things that we are doing. Now, if you talk about data sharing, it's not just technical. There is also political and policy considerations. Jurisdiction matters. In national waters, authorization from relevant jurisdictions is required if you want to share that data, which to some extent obviously makes sense. Even if a company collects data, that data in waters under national jurisdictions ultimately belongs to that nation. So they have a say in what to be done with that data beyond use for the project for which they handed over a permit. In international waters, in the high seas, permission must come from the organization that collected or contracted the data. So it's more easy there. Now, what we see is that individual countries, they have very different approaches to allowing and facilitating the sharing of data that has been collected by parties in their territorial and EEZ waters. And what we have noticed as corporate data group is that this at times stands in the way of private sector companies that are willing to share their data. So we succeed in talking to them and convincing them to open up their, in essence, valuable archives of data and hand it over for free to public repositories. And then when they want to do that, all of a sudden, country regulations become restrictive. And this variation between countries is really not helping us. So that's why, as a corporate data group, we prepared a policy recommendations. And in that policy recommendation, we urge and we motivate governments to facilitate data sharing in their national waters. And these recommendations, they were first presented to IODE, the International Oceanographic Data Exchange Conference, and later to the 33rd Assembly of the IOC Assembly in Paris in the summer. And there, 152 IOC member states adopted that policy recommendation. And that policy recommendation urges countries to implement policies that basically mandate ocean data sharing and to include data sharing conditions into their licensing agreements, into their operating permits and contracts for companies working in waters under their national jurisdictions. Now, obviously, that's very important because that's a major step if we would be able to achieve that almost by default, data that is collected, that it is being shared. Unfortunately, life is not so easy, so we need to work on this. So we need to use this policy recommendation, and we're doing that. We have a working group where with 15 countries who volunteered, we're working together to create use cases and best practices to engage wider with member states to have them adopt these kind of mandatory conditions into their agreements. And there are already good examples out there of countries who are making very meaningful steps, such as the United Kingdom, Crown Estate, Norway, Brazil, Australia. There are other countries as well, to really make sure that data that is being collected, that it is shared. Now, when you talk about this, and also when I talk to companies, you may ask yourself, despite all the things that I've said, why should companies share their data? For starters, sharing data builds a lot of confidence with stakeholders, both inside and outside the company. Like Arne said in the introduction, and like I said, I'm from Fugro. I know that within my company, the work that we do, and we're involved in this project and in Seabed 2030 now for almost 10 years, the work that we do as a for-profit private sector company creates a lot of enthusiasm amongst our staff. And so our employees, they really like that we use our know-how and expertise to also not only have a profitable business around ocean, it's part of our operations, but also do something with that knowledge and be a good steward of the ocean. So internally, stakeholders really like that, but also externally, if you talk with investors, if you talk with financiers, they like to see nowadays that companies do more than just earn money. I'm sure you've seen all the ESG reporting requirements, certainly in Europe, that have become much more stringent. So this fits within that. Sharing ocean data is not good for the planet only, it's good for business. So it builds trust, it improves modeling and forecasting, it reduces risks, operational risks, and enhances the ESG performance. But especially that risk reduction is quite important for companies. They benefit from the loop back of insights that's being gained from the data that they are sharing. And in this context, I think it's also important to realize that in the current geopolitical climate, data availability is not so logical, maybe, and not so freely available as it was before, because we see that increasing tensions and concerns over national security and the strategic value of certain data sets leads to tighter control and selective sharing. So as a result, we may have to anticipate potential delays or gaps or limitations in data availabilities, which will hamper the qualities of models we rely on, forecasting models for our operations. So we need to consider strategies to ensure continuity of data availability. So if you want to benefit from the best modeling and predictions, we must invest and promote open data initiatives where possible. So sharing data really positions companies as leaders in innovation, and most importantly, it helps shape a resilient blue economy. And if you talk to private sector companies who have their business in the marine environment, obviously that is a resounding argument. If you want a sustainable blue economy, you have to do something. So as I always say, sharing ocean data is not just the right thing to do, it's a very smart strategic move. And then actually getting towards almost my last slide, it's November 2025. We are halfway through this ocean decade for ocean science for sustainable development. I think the act to time is now. Better ocean data means better decisions. So for governments, better decisions for business, and better decisions for the planet. So for me, the question is not whether we should act now, but how we should act, what we're going to do, that we're really going to act. So I always try to leave my short presentations with the question, what are you going to do? What is your contribution going to be to the ocean and to data sharing? And with that, I'd like to stop my short pitch to share private sector data.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. I actually noted down a key question and then you answered it yourself a moment later.
That's good.
That was about the incentives for companies, and now I learned quite a bit about that.
I can elaborate a little bit on that because the incentives, obviously, when you talk to private sector companies and you're telling them, hey, you've got maybe 4 millions worth of ocean data that maybe have cost millions to collect in your archives, and we want you to give it away for free. Obviously, you need to see what are the incentives. And some of the incentives that we are trying to see is what is the acknowledgement that you can get for that ocean data. And one of the things that we're doing is we're talking to ESG rating agencies like CDP, MSCI, etc., to see whether there is a way to acknowledge these kinds of activities in ESG ratings. At the moment, that's not the case. But I'm also, for instance, talking to financial institutions to see whether private sector data sharing commitments and targets can be included in green financing frameworks or sustainable financing frameworks as an objective to be achieved. Because indeed, the qualitative incentives are there. We can all have a nice story, but every now and then you need to make it more tangible.
Yeah, exactly. No, that was actually, really a question I had, and then excellent answer. So let me open to the floor, and we have quite a few people who have been listening. Any questions you can put it in the chat or raise your hand virtually or however you want to reach me or us.
I don't know whether there are people representing private sector on the call. That would be interesting to see whether this is resounding, certainly if they are in the marine industry.
Hi, my name's Lamara Huck. I didn't hear the entire session, so apologies about that. But I did catch the last 10 minutes, and I've got a question. You said that you'd have approached the private sector with regards to even the ESG ratings. When you said that at the moment they have not shown interest, did they indicate why? Precisely?
No, I think it's a bit more nuanced. At the moment, ESG ratings, they don't have specific ocean science, ocean stewardship, or ocean data sharing elements in their rating models. I don't know whether you've worked with the rating agencies, but they all have their big black box models where you put in a lot of data and then a rating comes out. And
Yes.
I know from experience that indeed these elements are not yet in there. And that is also because rating agencies obviously look a lot at what are the so-called material topics for companies where they have a material impact or that have a material impact on that company, and that describes their rating. And ocean data sharing in general is not a material topic for private sector companies, although it is part often of biodiversity, and most marine companies that have an operation, they will have biodiversity impact as a material topic. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is to engage, and I've not made huge progress yet because it's difficult to engage with these rating agencies, but to engage with them to see how they could include this in their rating models, because that would be a great incentive for private sector companies.
Okay, understood. Maybe I could reach out to you afterwards so that we can continue this conversation. I have some ideas with that. So
yes, please.
Collaborative approach, but I will pass the floor back to you. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you. Maybe you can just quickly also let us know who you represent or who you work for.
Thank you very much. I work for myself. I also we're actually part of we're going to be launching a blue data a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization for the blue ocean economy. And we are currently working in ISO for the DAO governance, and it's been 5 years in the making. So currently we also have a private company where we are creating our own ESG rating agency, which is called the Blue Pulse. So that's why this was quite topical, actually. So thank you very much.
Yep, that's great to hear. Yeah, thank you for this comment or question.
Yeah.
Any others? And I also, would ask people to quickly introduce themselves and ask a question. Otherwise, when you raised your hand.
You're muted.
We can't hear you at the moment, when. Yeah. Maybe put it in the chat. I'll read it for you, okay? Otherwise, I have maybe another question. We talked about the incentives now, and it really helped me to clarify these. I was thinking a bit like what is the sort of the technical infrastructure that you propose companies to submit the data to, or what do you tell them really technically? Where should they?
No, that's a very good question.
Be located. Also, where is it physically hosted? Let's say the
So first of all, as Ocean Decade and Corporate Data Group, we don't absorb the data. We are Ocean Data. There are many open access repositories out there in the world. I mentioned a number of them: IODE, OBIS, GBIF, JEPCO CIBA 2030. There are many open repositories out there. So what we do is if you look in our data guidelines, we recommend what we feel are the most suitable open access data sharing data repositories. But we want people to feel as comfortable whatever they want to share it. For us, the importance is that it is shared with open access repositories. There are many out there. And within IOC and in the decade, there's also a lot of work ongoing to make sure that all these open access platforms are talking to each other. For instance, I know that data that goes into eModnet, bathymetry data will go into JEPCO, and data that goes into GBIF will also go into OBIS. So IOC makes sure that there is a ocean data infrastructure, an ocean data system, where the open repositories can connect and can share data, can share metadata. So that's our approach. It's it's a federation of data repositories, but like I said, it's not like we as IOC or as a corporate data group receive all that data. We're trying to facilitate use of all these systems that are out there already.
Yeah, understood. So you make recommendations, but you leave it to the private actor to where they want to.
Yes, where they want to share their data. Because there can be all kinds of considerations, can be geographic or other considerations where they feel most comfortable to share their data.
Yeah. All right, here we have a question in the chat from Jahan. So he says that there are some parallels between this call for private sector data sharing and the data for road safety. It's apparently an initiative based in the EU. Both have the key principle of free of charge data and a spirit of reciprocity, which act as additional incentive for private actors. Yeah, I think this aligns. So it's more of a comment I'm seeing than a question. I think this aligns with a lot of these calls and initiatives and efforts to make data publicly available, right?
Yes. No, obviously the IOC has a IOC data sharing policy, the fair and care principles. I'm sure lots of you have heard about it. So there is a whole world out there to make this possible, make sure that it happens in the correct way, looking at citation of data, all these kind of things. So there's a whole data ecosystem out there. And what we are trying to do is there are many sources where data is coming from. Obviously, science themselves collect a lot of data. And what I was talking about today is indeed getting that private sector data opened up. And what is important in that is that we need to make the barrier for private sector companies to share their data as low as possible. Because if we ask them, hey, can you share the data? And please, we want it in a red folder and font Arial and this format and whatever, then they think, oh, bugger, do I need to do all that? So that's also one of the things that we're trying to focus on, is to make it as easy as possible for them to share their data.
Yeah. Okay, there's also another question. I think this relates to the idea of adding it to the ESG rating for companies. The question is whether we can frame data philanthropy as a corporate ocean responsibility instead of a land-based corporate social responsibility. That would be an idea to go.
So, good question. I'm not familiar with these these credits. I'm not familiar with these credits. So I don't know how that would work on the ESG rating frameworks. So for me, my thinking is also first is double. If you talk about credits, first of all, I think you need to be ready to share the data no matter what. It's your corporate responsibility to share their data. And if there then as a kind of on top of as a kind of bonus, there is a credit possible one way or another, you have to see whether that adds value, but I'm not necessarily against it. But I'm always a little bit wary if, like with carbon credits, where they could be seen as a license to pollute. So that's where we always need to be careful. So if it's a real tangible recognition and acknowledgement of something shared, that is fine. If it means I share data and I can do something bad elsewhere, then we always have to be very mindful of how that works.
Yeah, actually good Well, maybe to connect to that, I can add a little question. Are you afraid, or like, is this a worry that there may be sort of companies may start just dumping anything they have so that they get credit and recognition?
Yeah, well, I don't think it will go that fast. I just think that I'm a strong believer that if you have a private sector company that has its business in the marine environment, in 2025, you cannot sit on ocean data. If you know all the things that are happening with the oceans, the impacts, climate change, we all hear about the decline of biodiversity, coastal protection. If you then say, well, I'm sitting on data, but I only give it when, I think something is wrong. I think, in 2025, you need to take a responsible stance and see what you can do to share that data. Again, I'm happy to see and look at opportunities to acknowledge that and to incentivize that. But the basic reason should be we are sitting on extremely valuable data that we have to make available.
Yeah, maybe I just I'm going to mix up the questions here a little bit how I see them fit, because I think the question I just see here, Lars, in the chat, is really connects to that, and it speaks to the specific situation of international waters, what you also hinted to. So how does it work in data sharing or sharing of data that comes from areas beyond national jurisdictions? So where in national waters, obviously the state can also make a company share data to some extent, right? And it can set certain conditions and licenses accompanied to it. But how does it work for international water? Who does this actually belong to, and how does this? What kind of licenses are attached to this?
Yes, that's a good question, and I'll be very honest that we are spending quite a lot of time in really getting to the bottom of how does data ownership, etc., work. And I'm not an international lawyer, so I have some reserve there. But in international waters, it seems to be relatively simple in the sense that the person or the company that collects the data or contracts a company to collect the data is the owner of the data and can do with that data what they want. At the same time, you see that within international United Nations frameworks, in the BBNJ agreement, in policies that the International Seabed Mining Authority is putting out, that they promote data sharing, that they promote that data that is being collected, that is being made available. What you will see in general is that most of the data to date has been collected in waters under national jurisdiction. That's where the most economic activity is, and data that's been collected in the high seas, that's often for instance, telecommunication cables from one continent to the other, or other specific projects. But a lot of the data is collected in the waters under national jurisdictions. What we will see, certainly with the BBNJ and the 30 by 30 and the growth of marine protected areas, is an increase in collection of data, because if you only look at the marine protected areas, you will want to have data. What is the current situation? How does it evolve? Is it working? So that will mean that more data will become available. So it's important then that data, that we focus on getting it shared as well.
Yeah, I think it was a good question. It's a good answer, but yeah, especially under the currently developments with BBNJ and so forth. I was also wondering whether you are involved in these discussions. For example, the BBNJ foresees, as you said, a lot of sharing of data from international waters.
Yeah.
And it also sort of has this clearinghouse mechanism that it aims to be sort of the facilitator for this data sharing. Are you involved in these discussions, or do you try to inform them also proactively?
So not myself, but IOC, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, they are involved in the BBNJ discussions. I think we've now had 2 PrepCom meetings. The third PrepCom, I think, in March or April. So IOC is at the table there, and IOC also has clear plans and put forward to how the clearinghouse mechanism could work and what role IOC could play in there. I don't know what the exact situation is there, but given the role of IOC within the domain of the ocean. Obviously, it has a clear role to play there.
Yeah. It also connects actually to the next question I put here, I saw here, and that actually is asking about the role of the IOC. So that's actually a question I never asked myself. So you're doing this under the umbrella of the IOC, but would it also be possible or foreseeable under another umbrella, or why is it the IOC's role in promoting?
Well, I think obviously this is on the top, on my first slide, you saw at the top the United Nations, the General Assembly of the United Nations, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO has been in place for decades, serving its member states all questions related to ocean and ocean science. So when the United Nations General Assembly considered, hey, something is going wrong here, we need to do something about the oceans, and they proclaimed this Ocean Decade, I think it was a very logical move towards the IOC. I was not part of that, so I don't know how that went, but I think from a global perspective, I think it's a logical place to have this Ocean Decade. And since if you see at the breadth and the width of the Ocean Decade in the Ocean Decade actions, also for us as corporate data group, we see that we can have a huge impact here, working within the framework of and also the facilities of the Ocean Decade to make this happen. Now, I'm sure that there are other organizations. I don't know whether organizations of this global breadth and width, but we are certainly talking also to other organizations who are also seeing the opportunity to mobilize the Ocean Decade. And for me, it's not a competitive playing field. For me, the key thing is that if ocean companies working in the ocean environment and the marine environment have data to share, that they share that data. And where they do it at the end of the day, I couldn't care less, as long as it is within open repositories, connected repositories. And we are doing our bit through this channel to promote this, and I'm fully happy with all kinds of other initiatives, and we're talking to these other initiatives as well, how we can strengthen and amplify each other.
Yeah. Excellent. Maybe going back a bit to the dynamics of a private sector. There's a question here, whether you've seen that the private, how have you seen that the private sector reacts to the BBNJ framework coming up? So you said earlier that until now it was the owner of the data was the person or the company that collected it, and now I think with the new BBNJ treaty coming into force in January, that may change a bit, right? Because the data will now become also part of the regulatory framework of BBNJ. Do you see the private actors already adapting, or how do they talk about this?
Well, first of all, I see what you see both in UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention Law of the Sea, and the BBNJ, which is under UNCLOS. There's a lot of talk about data and data sharing, but often it's related to marine scientific research. And marine scientific research is not very clearly defined, but it is clear that in general, private sector ocean data collector is not considered marine scientific research. So that's important. That means that, and again, with the caveat, I'm not an international lawyer, but that there is still some gaps within international legislation around sharing of especially private sector ocean data. So for me, at this moment, it's still, as far as I can see, the situation that the person who collects or contracted to collect has a say what happens to the data. That being said, I think that the private sector is looking, obviously, what is happening. The BBNJ will now come into force. We've had more than 60 signatories, so we'll have, I guess, sometime next year, the first COP. So it's really starting to work, and then we will start seeing the effects of what it really means to have signed up to that agreement.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. And then we have another question in the chat from Chandra Sekra. And he asked about the ocean accounts framework. So So whether economic activity in national jurisdiction is captured under the ocean accounts framework. Is this something you've encountered or you work with?
I'm not knowledgeable on the ocean accounts framework, so I cannot answer that question.
Okay. I also had to Google it to be
I will, but I'm writing it down and I'm going to look into it.
I also had to Google it on the side. All right. I can continue talking about the implications of BBNJ for the sharing of data for hours, but maybe there are some other questions in the chat here. Or anyone who wants to directly.
Hear me now?
Yes, when now I can hear you.
Yes. Sorry. Probably that you to confirm. I'm very interested in whether some.
Sorry, I cannot hear you. I can hear that you talk, but I cannot hear what you're saying.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please try again.
Okay. So I wanted to ask whether IOC is currently, so the corporate data group is engaging with private sector in terms of data beyond national jurisdiction. Is this something in the plan, or?
No, we are already, for instance, I know that one of the member companies of the corporate data group is Alcatel Submarine Networks. That's a French company very much involved in telecommunication cables between continents. So for these telecommunication cables, they have to undertake all kinds of surveys of the route that telecommunication cable is taking. They do all kinds of investigations, and these are obviously often in the high seas. If you go from the United States to Europe, you'll cross the high seas. And I know that Alcatel is very actively looking at how they can make their data available as well. And they're actively talking with their clients to make sure that whenever possible, this kind of data, and then especially I'm talking about bathymetry, seabed mapping data, whether that can be made available. And what is interesting also to know that at times there can be certain security considerations with regards to sharing of data, but you can also share data under embargo, saying, I want to share this data, but with you, but don't make it publicly available for the next 3 years. Or what's also, for instance, important, if you look at seabed mapping data, for JEPCO, that's the General Bathymetric Chart of the Ocean, you can they are happy with a grid of 100 by 100 meters, whereas normal seabed mapping data is much more accurate, has much more density of data points. So you can also downgrid data that you're having where it's still very useful, but not yet, not gives away all the secrets, so to speak. So also when you, and then I came to explain that because I'm talking telecommunication cables, and people always get worried about telecommunication cables. So there's all the things that you can do, and that data we're looking at that as well within the corporate data group. And one other thing is that, for instance, you have a lot of ships and vessels that are sailing every day from A to B. And we're looking, is there a possibility that these vessels have standardized met-ocean weather stations on their vessels, so that they continuously collect basic weather information and send that weather information to weather data repositories to feed global climate models. Because if you look, for instance, at where weather data is collected, the global south has very limited data. So IOC is also promoting a program at the moment, 10,000 ships for the ocean, where between now and 2035, they want to equip 10,000 vessels with these standardized weather monitoring boxes that autonomously collect and transmit real-time weather data. And these are also obviously sailing in the high seas. That's how I came to that example. Thank you.
Excellent. I hope this answers your question, Wen. I have another one, because you said earlier that you have quite a developed pitch towards companies that they ought to share their data. But you also mentioned that one of the larger hurdles is that sometimes then countries are hesitant or don't want to make companies or let companies share data that is under the national jurisdiction or the coastal state. Do you have what would be your pitch towards sort of the country to allow this? Is this something you also engage with, or is this sort of beyond your scope?
No, we engage through these countries also in various ways. It's a bit of a zipper approach. We need to talk to everybody. So on the one hand, a lot of engagement with private sector associations, etc. On the other hand, with countries, and with countries we talk. We have national through the Ocean Decade. We have national decade committees, which support the Ocean Decade at the country level. So we engage with them to, in their countries, talk about these policy recommendations. We talk through our member state delegates. IOC is serving 150 member states. So we talk to member state delegates about things that we are trying to achieve on their behalf. Don't forget that policy recommendation that I showed in the presentation was accepted by these member states in the IOC Assembly. So with that in our hand, we can go back to these member states and say, hey, you signed up to this, what are we going to do? There are other organizations. The International Hydrographic Organization has member states. So if you look again at bathymetry, seabed mapping, we use the IHO to also engage with member states to make sure that we try to share what is possible and only restrict what is needed. What you see often is that when people see one or two objections, they bin the whole initiative. And obviously that's the wrong thing to do. I think you need to look at the opportunities of data sharing and where it is possible and not where it is not possible. I'm sure that there are situations where it's complex to share data, but focus your energy and efforts on where it is possible, and then you still have the positive benefits.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. Just quickly to throw in here that the link for what the ocean accounts is was posted in the chat. So if you want to look that up.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and I will certainly look into that.
Yeah. Then I maybe have just another question, if nobody wants to interrupt me, and that would be a bit related to the formatting and sort of the curation work that goes into this. So is this are you just sort of proposing companies to submit in whatever state it is that they have it, or do you at least recommend or require certain formatting, and then who is supposed to sort of do this and pay for the work that needs to be done to bring it into comparable formats?
Good. Luckily, if you talk in marine industries, they are used to work towards certain standards when they are collecting data, when they're reporting data, because even in those private sector projects, companies and people have to work together using the same sets of data, and that only works if there's a certain level of standardization and quality to the data. So it's not like it's total mayhem out there. Luckily, there is a basic and advanced level of standardization and quality in general of that data. That's one starting point. Obviously, if you look at the data repositories, they at times they have certain requirements with regards to formatting and availability, but also and quality. But also these are in general, well-known and accepted quality and data format standards that are out there. So normally that should not be a significant problem. Two things to that. First of all, yes, if I'm a private sector company and I have data and I want to unlock it, there will be some time and effort involved in finding the data on the servers, making it ready for transmission. So there will be some investment needed to hand over that data to whatever open data repository that you are going to send it to. The good thing is, and luckily private sector companies, they understand that as well, that amount of investment is in essence very limited. If you talk a big data collection campaign for a private sector project, that the investment can be between a couple of $100,000 to a couple of million dollars or euros. So the investment in collecting the data already has been done. Now, to make that data available, curating it, that may cost some time, some hours of a data engineer, a data manager, but obviously, yeah, it's insignificant compared to the original investment. So once you've taken the decision to make that data available because you see the huge impact that it can have, those hours of a data engineer are insignificant. So in general, companies, they don't see a big hurdle in that. And at times, some of the open data repositories, they're also capable of helping as needed. But that's something where then these companies need to talk to these repositories saying, hey, I have this data set, but I have this problem with it. What can you do? And at times, these repositories can do something, but that's then a case-by-case discussion.
Yeah, thank you. We have another question here, and that's also regarding the reuse for commercial purposes. So assuming that the data becomes public domain, how can it be reused for commercial purposes? And then, well, wouldn't companies be hesitant to share, knowing that someone else may make profit out of it, and without having contributed to its collection? And so, yeah, there are different licenses you can attach to data. Some of them require to acknowledge the credit, give credit to the source, the data collector. From your experience, what is the typical licensing that they use, and is this something they are skeptical about?
Yeah. No, so in general, yes, there are licensing models, and most open repositories, they have standard licensing models available. Yes, there are obviously companies out there who use the data to derive products, and often these are, basically additional products and services for which they have used the data for which there is a need, otherwise they wouldn't make the product. So yes, there is a possibility that at times your data is being used by another company to create a new model around the oceans, etc. That is true. Often, again, that then responds to a need, because if we only have data repositories and nothing happens with that data, that's also not very good. You want to have that data to do science. Now, part of the science is done by academia, and part of that science is done by for-profit companies for commercial purposes. In my view, apart from how you can deal with that with licenses, to some extent it is maybe inevitable. The key thing for me is that data that is out there, that it is being used by science, and if there are companies who derive a useful product from it, I'm not unhappy about it. And if as a private sector company you see a risk, well, you can again include it in your licensing models. At the end of the day, the importance is that data that is available, that it's shared and that it's being used, and also from an economic perspective, that we're not going to recollect data that already has been collected. So there are some of these conundrums, and those on a case-by-case basis, and depending on the type of data, you have to look at that. And some of these things, where there's commercial value to it, you can again look also at embargoes, etc. Or you can even if you have concerns about that, you can also only share your metadata. Then at least people know that the data is out there, and they can, if they want, they can contact you without them having immediate access to that data. So in these kind of situations, there are solutions to be derived.
Yeah.
But one last thing, inevitable, if you have open access data, it is open access data.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you can, for example, attach a license to it that they can use for non-commercial purposes, for example. Yeah, I think this is what the question was aiming at. Another very good question is, how can we validate data regarding the basis for data sharing. So yeah, is there some sort of validation going on?
Yeah, so again, that's something largely so between us, not between the private sector company in this case and the data repository that's accepting the data. Obviously, they have their data requirements. They will engage with the private sector company to understand the quality and the purpose of that data. And that will include certain quality parameters as well.
Okay, otherwise I'm hearing a lot of thank you for the good talk and yeah, the need for a collaborative platform to use in the future. If the audience is happy, I'm hearing a lot of thank you. Yeah, good. I hope we answered all the questions so far. I'm running out of my questions here, so if there's nothing else, I would sort of move over to first of all say that if you arrived late or there were some open questions and you want to review today's presentation, you can do that. So there, do you see my presentation? Yeah. So we have a YouTube channel where tomorrow morning we'll upload, not today anymore, because we're also going towards the end of the work, end of our workday. But tomorrow we will upload this talk and the Q&A on the YouTube channel, so you can have a look there. Also, of the previous ocean seminars you can find there. So yeah, whether you're interested in what was discussed earlier or in the last weeks, you can find it there. And I would also like to use this opportunity to make a bit of advertisement for the next presentation by Murray Rabone, who's working at the Natural History Museum in London, and is also associated with the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative, the OZ. And so she has a lot of experience in working with different databases, particularly also the public one by the International Seabed Authority, and she will give a bit of an insight from the point of view of a marine biologist who has worked with different databases, which turn out to be actually useful and which maybe less, and what the different practices and the different cultures and standards she has observed and found there. So I'm really looking forward to that on the 10th of December. Again, always the time is at 5 p.m. We are located in Vienna, University of Vienna, so it's a Central European time. And let me just go back to the chat quickly. Yes, I can put the link in the YouTube channel in the chat. Maybe Philip, can you just post the link for the YouTube channel in the chat so people can click on it? That would be great. Thank you. Otherwise, we would also use this opportunity now to have your attention that we maybe invite you to our ocean data survey. So as I said earlier, this research project is investigating how data and technologies like digital twins of the oceans are used and can be used in international negotiations and policy making. And for this, we're trying to find out how people have used or are using data and different technologies at the moment. And so you should be able to put your camera over this QR code and just fill out the survey. That would help us a lot, and we really hope to give some insights and give some recommendations into this. Thank you, Philip, for posting the link. Yeah, I'll just leave the link to the ocean data survey here for a second. The last thing then I'm going to present and announce is that tomorrow, for those that are in Vienna, maybe not that many in the online format, but those that are in Vienna, tomorrow we have a on-site lecture on whether a big, broader topic. So this ocean seminar series is really for the more specialized nerds, but tomorrow is more broader about whether environmental treaties work, and this will be on-site in Vienna, also at 5 p.m. in the university. Finally, thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, Wen, for organizing this. Thank you for Philip for providing the technical support, and also thank you, Alice, who's in the audience, I believe, for hosting the seminar series. It's also a really great opportunity for us always to learn more about, get to know the people that work on these topics, but also really learn about what is going on, because there is so much going on under the Ocean Science Decade. And yeah, thank you very much for the presentation.
From my side also, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Always very happy And certainly, if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'm happy to engage with you further one way or another.
Yeah. Also, thank you for disseminating and posting about this ocean seminar online. It was really, I think this is why so many people showed up, because IOC UNESCO has really a large outreach. So finally, yeah, a bit of advertisement for us. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, the website, Blue Sky, and can stay updated. You will also get the link to the YouTube channel and to the recording via our newsletter. So you can also subscribe to our newsletter on the website. Yeah, thank you very much.